life is short. So what are we really living? For a quiet answer from Buddhist wisdom, sometimes in the middle of life's most ordinary moments, folding laundry, sitting silently on a bus, or just watching the light spill through a window, a question quietly slips into your mind, without warning, without drama. What is all this for? What's the point of it all? At other times, that question doesn't come so quietly. It may appear right after a major life event, a hard-earned success, or the painful loss of something dear. And in the quiet that follows, when the noise of the world momentarily fades, a whisper begins to rise from within. You don't always share this question with others, not because you're ashamed of it, but because it feels too deep, too personal, too hard to put into words. Many people think the question, "What's the meaning of life?" is like a puzzle, something that must be solved with a clear, definite answer. But sometimes what matters more is not what the question is, but why it came to you in the first place. From a Buddhist perspective, asking about the meaning of life is not a sign of crisis. Quite the opposite. It's a rare and precious gift. It shows that your mind is no longer satisfied with surface-level answers like "just be happy" or "do your best every day." Maybe those phrases once comforted you, but now they no longer feel like enough. And that very moment, when those old answers no longer fit, is the beginning of awakening. Buddhism tells an old parable. Imagine a blind turtle living at the bottom of the ocean. Once every 100 years, it rises to the surface, and floating on the sea is a small wooden ring. The odds of the turtle's head surfacing through that ring are the same as the odds of being born a human being. This story isn't meant to scare you or weigh you down with guilt. It simply reminds us life is rare, not because it's perfect, but because you have the capacity to ask questions like this. That's what makes it extraordinary. French philosopher Albert Camus once said that the most serious question we can ask in life is whether it has any meaning at all. He called it the absurd, that strange feeling of searching for meaning in a world that seems to respond with silence. But you know what? It's that longing, that deep desire to know and understand, that's what makes us truly alive. You may not always have the answer, but the very fact that you want to know, that you're brave enough to ask, is proof that you're truly living, not just existing. Courage is not running, but turning toward the silence within. For many, courage is defined by bold action or facing danger. But for some, real bravery is simply refusing to run from the quiet inside themselves. It's the willingness to sit still and look deeply into the emptiness without trying to cover it up. In Buddhism, that silence isn't seen as cold or hollow. It's seen as space, a vast open field where awareness can take root. And in that space, something new has the chance to grow. So if today you find yourself asking, does this life have any meaning? Don't rush to answer it. The fact that you're asking is already extraordinary. It means you're starting to look beyond temporary comforts and short-term goals. And that is the first sign of wisdom. Who knows? Maybe this life, fleeting and fragile as it is, isn't about finding the answer at all. Maybe it's about becoming so awake, so present, that you begin to ask yourself honestly, am I truly living? And sometimes, just that question alone can change everything. The endless chase, pursuing pleasure, avoiding pain. You might think that pain is the hardest part of life, but when you look more closely, you'll see the real trap isn't the pain itself. It's how we keep trying to run away from it. Not only that, we chase happiness as if it's something we can hold on to forever. But every time we reach for it, it slips away. And so we dive back into the search, more desperate, more exhausted than before. And on it goes, an endless loop. Most people live stuck between two extremes. On one side, we crave the pleasant success, love recognition. On the other, we try to avoid discomfort, fear, failure, rejection. But even when we get what we want, happiness doesn't stay. That initial joy fades, and a new desire rises. Modern psychology calls this the hedonic treadmill, a kind of invisible machine we run on, never moving forward. Whether rich or poor, educated or not, anyone can get trapped in this loop. What we chase may differ, but the restlessness feels the same. In Buddhism, this pattern is called dukkha, often translated as suffering, but it goes deeper than just physical or emotional pain. Dukkha is the quiet unease that lingers even when everything on the surface seems fine, like an itch you can't quite reach. The Buddha never said that joy was wrong. He understood it well, but he also taught that clinging to happiness, trying to make it last, creates tension, and avoiding sorrow only gives it more power. So whether you're chasing joy or running from pain, you're still caught in the same trap. Have you ever felt this? That moment of success, only to watch the joy fade too quickly. And suddenly, you're off chasing the next thing. No pause, no rest. When running from emotions stops working, have you ever kept yourself busy all day just to avoid thinking about something painful? But then night falls, the lights go out, and the feelings come back like they never left. Don't blame yourself. It's not weakness. It's simply how the emotional cycle works. We often believe, if I just change something on the outside, the job, the relationship, the location, then the inside will feel better. But the Buddha taught that peace doesn't come from fixing your environment. It comes from understanding yourself. And this endless loop of emotional highs and lows, it's not life being unfair. It's a misunderstanding of what happiness really is. We think joy is something we can keep forever, and suffering is something we should never have to feel. But both happiness and sorrow are just passing waves on the surface of the mind. What hurts us most isn't that they appear. It's our constant effort to hold on or push them away. Waking up to this cycle isn't easy. But the moment you start to observe it, without chasing and without resisting, something inside you begins to soften. And in that softening, you touch a kind of stillness, a quiet that runs deeper than all the noise. Stillness beneath the surface of it all. This stillness doesn't depend on getting what you want or avoiding what you fear. It's not the result of success or failure. It comes from a simple awareness, the ability to look into your own mind without judgment. And the beautiful truth is that stillness is always there, not in some future lifetime, not in a better version of yourself, but here, now, right beneath the K of your everyday thoughts. You don't have to destroy every desire. You just have to notice how they pull you, how they spin the wheel. And when you look with gentleness, not force, the cycle begins to slow down. Not because you've won, but because you realize there was never anything to win. The ripple effect, and why death is not the end. When life feels stuck or unbearable, some people say quietly, almost like a sigh, maybe death will be the end of it all. They may not mean it literally, but behind those words often lies a silent wish that when they close their eyes, for the last time, all the confusion, pain, and weariness will simply vanish, as if death were a reset button erasing everything. But from the perspective of Buddhist wisdom, death is not a full stop. It's a transition, like turning the page to a new chapter. Not a break, but a continuation. The reason we feel trapped in cycles of chasing and avoiding is because every action, every word, even every thought leaves a trace. Just like when you toss a stone into a still lake, the ripples keep expanding long after the splash disappears from sight. Our actions don't disappear just because we've forgotten them. They silently weave themselves into a web of causes and conditions stretching through time and space. Karma is not punishment, but the natural law of cause and effect. Have you ever noticed? When you throw a rock into a lake, the surface may settle, but the ripples keep moving outward, quietly, endlessly. Even if you can't see them anymore, they're still there. In Buddhism, this is the nature of kama karma. Not a punishment, not a reward, not some divine being keeping score. Karma is simply the natural result of action, the way fire burns, the way water flows. When you speak with kindness, your heart softens and opens. When you act out of anger or jealousy, your heart begins to harden and close. These ripples of action don't always show up immediately, but they are silently shaping your future, not just in this life, but in the lives to come. In many ways, this isn't so different from physics. Newton's third law says every action has an equal and opposite reaction. Buddhism simply extends this idea from the physical world into the mind. Every thought is a seed. In Buddhist thought, every mental intention, no matter how small, carries energy. And that energy continues to move, to unfold, to ripple outward. Not because someone sends it somewhere, but because consciousness itself is a flow, always active, always becoming. So what happens when the body dies? Many religions teach that there is a fixed, eternal soul, unchanging, untouched by time, that goes to heaven or hell based on how we lived. But Buddhism offers a different view. The Buddha taught, there is no permanent self hidden behind this form, no eternal soul that stays the same. Instead, there is a continuous stream of consciousness shaped by karma, shaped by habit, shaped by all the patterns we've repeated throughout our lives. And when the body dissolves, that stream does not end. It continues not as you, but as the results of what you have thought, done, and believed. Not a person returning, but a flame passed on. Imagine lighting one candle with another. The flame continues, but it's not the same flame. It's not an exact copy, and it's not entirely new. It's a continuation, fluid, unbroken, and always changing. That is what Buddhism calls rebirth. Not a person returning, but the flow of cause and effect continuing forward. There is no fixed self that carries over, but the consequences of actions, emotions, and beliefs still ripple through the fabric of existence. The ripple is real, and why death isn't the end. It may sound abstract, even strange, but you see it every day. A small habit like staying up late or saying something hurtful can leave an imprint for years. No one needs to punish you. The action itself carries the consequence. Death isn't the end. It's a natural part of life. Think of how a seed falls from a tree. The tree may no longer exist, but within that tiny seed, a living blueprint remains. Or after a storm, the wind may die down, the clouds may clear, but the earth still holds the trace hidden beneath the surface. Life works the same way. We don't continue on because some being carries us across lifetimes. We continue because every cause gives rise to an effect, and from that, a new process begins. If we've never truly understood life, then death, when it comes, doesn't bring freedom. The fear of death isn't just about the unknown. More often, it comes from something unresolved, a sense that we've never touched the truth of our own lives, that we've been chasing shadows. Somewhere deep inside, there's a quiet worry, even if we can't name it, that if we leave this world still lost in confusion, those ripples of unrest will keep moving forward, and that confusion will continue with them. But this isn't a story of fear. It's a reminder of power. Because if every action leaves a ripple, then every moment carries meaning. Every choice, even the smallest, carries weight. That means we are not bound by fate. We are not being punished by some higher force. We are simply living through the results of past actions, and at the same time, creating new ones in this very moment. You don't have to believe in reincarnation to feel the truth of this. Just observe. A single word can make someone smile or break their heart. A small daily habit, good or bad, gradually shapes your future. A single act of kindness can open a completely new path. That's karma, not floating in some invisible realm, but unfolding right here, right now, in real time. Not magic, just reality. Death is only scary when we haven't fully lived. The Buddha never told us to fear death. He told us to understand it, because death only becomes terrifying when we've never truly looked into life. But when we stop, when we begin to see the root of our suffering, we no longer feel the need to run. And when we understand the source of the cycle, we no longer feed it. You don't have to escape rebirth if you're no longer fueling it. No more throwing new stones into the lake. No more actions that stir the water into waves. When that happens, death is no longer a frightening ending. It becomes a quiet moment of release. Not because death disappears, but because there's nothing left to fear. The lake is still. The mind is at peace, from confusion to clarity. The path without a name. After all the chasing and fearing, after trying to control life, avoid pain, and cling to happiness, there comes a moment when we pause and ask, does peace come from fixing the world, or from facing it and walking through it with our own 2 feet? We spend so much energy trying to fix life, making plans, chasing perfection, avoiding failure. But the harder we try, the further peace seems to slip away. And then, something inside us shifts. We realize, no matter how much we fix the outside, if our hearts are still full of craving, the cycle continues, even past death. That's when the Buddha offered something radical in its simplicity, the middle path. The middle path. Not avoiding life, but walking through it. This isn't a cold or empty road. It's not about avoiding passion or living without emotion. The middle path is balance. Not letting desire pull us too far forward, and not letting fear drag us down. Not surrendering blindly to impulse, and not shutting down our feelings. It's a quiet, steady walk, but one that opens space for deep wisdom to grow. Many think the spiritual path must lead away from ordinary life. But the Buddha's middle way never asked us to escape the world. It invites us to live in it with clear eyes and an open heart. Whether you're a parent, a student, a worker, or a farmer, this path speaks to you. You don't have to become someone else. You just have to live a little more awake each day, choosing balance. Not because it's easy, but because it's worth it. Living. The middle path doesn't mean being perfect. It means living with intention. Knowing what you're doing. Knowing what your words plant in others. Knowing what your gaze carries when it lands on someone. It's an invitation to ask, what am I feeding in my mind? Am I watering fear, greed, and anger, or choosing kindness, honesty, and responsibility, even when it's hard? This balance isn't rigid. It's deeply human. It's allowing joy without clinging, facing pain without falling apart. It's walking a quiet road, but carrying a deep, steady power within. The Buddha once compared spiritual practice to tuning a stringed instrument. Too tight, it breaks. Too loose, it won't play. Only when it's tuned just right can it create something beautiful. And only when we live with that same inner harmony can our hearts begin to touch true peace, when balance becomes second nature. Just like a string tuned to the perfect tension when the heart is calibrated, not too tight, not too loose. Life begins to sing in gentle, beautiful tones. This is not a way to escape the world. It's a way to move through it with eyes wide open, a calm heart, and steady steps. Eventually, this balance becomes second nature. You're no longer fighting your way through life. You're simply living not out of fear or pressure, but with a quiet, enduring wisdom that carries you forward. Meaning isn't at the finish line. It's in every step. After all the searching, all the questions. Why, what's the point? We return to the beginning. Only now, something has shifted. We no longer demand answers from the universe. We no longer wait for clarity to come wrapped in certainty. Because now we understand meaning isn't out there somewhere. It's not in the future. It's not waiting behind success or healing. It's here in this moment. In Buddhism, the word sati, often translated as mindfulness, also means remembrance. Not just remembering to breathe or to focus, but remembering what truly matters. That this moment is your life. Not tomorrow. Not when everything's perfect. But now, presence isn't slowness. It's the courage to feel fully alive. To live with presence doesn't mean meditating all day or breathing deeply every hour. It means showing up completely for your own life. It means daring to feel everything: the joy, the ache, the clarity, the confusion, without needing to fix or change any of it. In Taoist thought, there's a concept called Wu Wei, often misunderstood as doing nothing. But in truth, it points to a way of being so attuned to reality that your actions arise naturally, without resistance, without force, like a tree growing, like a river flowing. Nothing forced, nothing held back, just full participation in what is. True presence is not retreating from the world. It's diving into life fully honestly, completely, listening to someone not to fix but to understand, washing a dish as if the whole universe is reflected in that water. This isn't reserved for monks or saints. It's closer than you think, as near as your next breath. The moment you notice sunlight on the floor and feel I am alive. And that is no small thing. Meaning is no longer a goal, but something that quietly blooms. When you live like this, with sincerity, presence, and intention, meaning stops being a goal to chase. It begins to quietly bloom in the way you speak, in the way you care, in the way you pause before reacting. The Buddha didn't offer answers. He offered a path. And what that path reveals step by step, breath by breath, is that life isn't about conquering fixing or figuring it all out. It's about no longer being at war with life, no longer being absent from it. And when you live like that, gently, honestly, fully meaning appears. Not as a theory, but as a way of being. A quiet presence that touches everything you do. This life doesn't need to be perfect to be profound. It only needs to be real. And true presence is what makes it real.